Hey, y'all. My name is Taya Reimer, and I want to welcome you back to the Taya Talk podcast. My guest today is somebody who's done everything at every single level. She was a McDonald's All-American, two-time national champion at UConn with All-Conference and All-America honors. She was the 7th overall pick in the 2014 WNBA draft, and she has been playing in the W and overseas ever since, doing her thing, and somebody that I admire so much on the court, but also off the court because she's a mom, and she is an amazing mother and balances motherhood and being an elite athlete so well. So, Bria Hartley, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I am so excited for this. Again, like I just said, because not only are you an elite athlete who's done everything on the court, but as you know, it's so hard to juggle motherhood and doing all of those things. So I want to get into it. I want to talk all about your journey as a mom, pregnancy, birth, getting back into playing afterwards, and now what it looks like for you being a mom. So let's get into it. Let's start with when you found out you were pregnant. So tell me where you were in your career when you found out that you were pregnant, and then kind of what was your mindset there as far as your career. Like, was there ever any part of you that was like, dang, maybe I won't play again? Or were you like super motivated to get back to playing because of your baby? Just talk to me about all of that.
So I was fairly young. I was in my 3rd season with the Washington Mystics. So, I was 23 years old. And just the timing of it when I found out was just I was very unsure, if I'm being completely honest. Just being so young. I think also during that time, there was still like a stigma about being an athlete and being a mom. So a lot of times it was just like, you can't do both. I will say when I was with the Washington Mystics, I actually had 2 teammates who had kids and were working their way back. So Taylor Hill had one my rookie year, and then my second year, dang, I'm blanking on her name right now, but another one of my teammates had a baby as well. So I saw them being moms and kind of doing it and making it happen. And I think that kind of helped me understand, like, it is possible. I won't say it's easy, but it definitely helped me see that it is possible. So as far as playing and getting back to playing, though, there was never a doubt in my mind. I mean, I was so young. It's like I'm 23.
Like, you have more to give.
Of course I'm going to play basketball. Play basketball. Like, so that was like a no-brainer for me. It was just figuring out everything else. That was the difficult part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so how was your pregnancy? Like, did you have really bad morning sickness? Were you just like happy and, everything was smooth? How did it go for you?
So I'll actually say I found out I was pregnant probably end of May, June. So like, I'm just coming back from overseas. Like, I'm pretty sure it was before like our first or second WNBA game. And the early stages, I was okay for the most part. And at that time, I didn't really tell anyone. Like, my mom kind of knew, my dad didn't really know yet, but I was still kind of just like figuring out like what my next move was.
Of course.
And early on, I remember like I wasn't drinking or anything, and my teammates were like, "What? Like, you're not drinking?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm taking a break." I normally drank, and they're just like, I mean, sometimes I would take breaks and be like, "Oh, I'm not drinking." They're just like, "Oh, she just doesn't want to drink." And then I remember times like, I wouldn't say my morning sickness was like every morning, but there were certain like moments where I was just I couldn't really keep any food down. I remember we were playing in LA, and my roommate, this is back when we still had roommates too. My roommate was Kalia Copper. And we came from Yard House, and I just had some plain pasta because I knew my stomach was just whatever. So I was like, let me eat something. And she's my roommate, and I think she was like playing music or whatever. So I was like, I'm gonna get in the shower, and like I was throwing up in the bathroom all the pasta that I just ate. And
That
I
is
still don't
so
know if she
funny.
knows that to this
That's
day.
so
But
funny.
it was just crazy. But then I wouldn't say it was daily, and then kind of I played until I was like 4.5, almost 5 months pregnant.
Okay. Okay.
That year I ended up missing like the last 10 games.
Okay.
I didn't tell the coach until like way
Yeah.
later. Just because I was
Yeah.
still like scared. I was like, I don't know if they'll cut me,
No,
this and that. Like
absolutely.
there was no protection of as far as like
Yeah.
maternity leave or anything like that. So I was just kind of like, I told them the best timing I feel like I could tell
Yeah.
them. That was
Absolutely.
still like respectful for sure. And then when I went home, I feel like because I wasn't going to practice every day and that
Mhm.
routine, like I still went to work out or
Mhm.
whatever, but like I was just sitting at home a lot more.
Right,
I
of
felt
course.
more nauseous later in my
Yeah. Yeah.
pregnancy than I did in the beginning.
Wow, that's
Like,
crazy.
and I just couldn't eat, and I just felt like I didn't have an appetite. So
Oh
I never
gosh.
ate for two during my pregnancy. I'll tell
Yes.
people that. Like,
I
I
know
only
it's not.
gained, I think, like 18 pounds or something
Oh,
like
girl, good
that.
for you.
Somewhere, right? Where like the doctors at one point were just like, "Is the baby you're measuring so small? Is he growing? Is he
Yeah.
okay?"
Yeah.
I guess since I was like taller and I probably just
Yeah.
carried a lot more like in
Yeah.
my back versus like coming out. But
Absolutely. I was the
yeah,
same
no,
exact way.
really,
Yeah. Literally, even up until I had my baby, I was like, "Are you in there?"
right,
Like,
right.
what's going on?
Girl, I
Oh,
weigh like these last few years with my ACL, I weigh more like
that's
now than I did 9 months pregnant.
that is so
Like
funny.
I literally only got up to 160 pounds and I
Oh
started
my
at like
gosh.
142 or something like that.
That's so funny.
So it was crazy.
Man, that is crazy. See, my first trimester, I lost so much weight because I was so sick, like all day,
Yeah.
every day, throwing up. And then, girl, I gained it right back and gained some more. Now, when I could really eat, I was like, oh, bet I'm
Right.
eating.
See, I was waiting for that though. I'm like, when am I gonna be able to like really eat? Like,
Exactly.
and I just couldn't.
Just
I was nibbling
enjoying
stuff
it.
throughout the day. Like,
Oh, man. That's the worst because I
crazy.
know, yeah, like how I felt at the beginning. I would not wish that on anybody because that is,
Did you have the thing too? Like every time I brush my teeth, I feel like I
yes,
have to throw up.
yes,
Like every single time.
yes. Yes.
Like no food in my system, and I'm just throwing up like
Yes.
fire.
Yes. Oh my God, that is the
It's so
worst.
bad.
It's the worst. Just the
Yes.
gagging, like nothing even.
hmm
Oh, it's awful.
I
So
hated it.
I was like that in the beginning, and then
hmm
I got to the point because, like you said, like I feel like I carried so internally.
hmm
Then towards the end, when I would eat, like I would get so full so quickly, and then I would feel sick, like in that way,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
overeating. But I'm like, dang, I barely ate, like
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's just that's awful. Again,
Right.
nothing that
Right.
for anybody who doesn't have morning sickness or any of that, like good for you.
I'm
But
jealous. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Okay, so you talked about the timing of telling your coaching
hmm
staff. Do you feel like they received it well? Because like you said, obviously at that point there was a bit of a stigma still. Um, and just wasn't as common and like you said, no protection.
Yeah.
So did you feel, even though you were kind of nervous about it and tried to wait for the right timing, like when you actually finally did tell them, do you feel like they were supportive of that?
Yeah, I feel like I had Coach T or Mike Tebow or
Mhm.
whatever, and he was with the Mystics for a long time and with a few other WNBA teams. He was very good about being family oriented. I saw with
Yeah.
my teammate or whatever and her bringing her son on trips and everything like that. And he really just tried to figure out what was best for me and for the team because it was one of those things with me. I was cleared to play until the end of the regular season, but we
Mhm.
were like borderline making the playoffs. So I
Right.
wanted to kind of tell him and give a heads up because I didn't want our team to make the playoffs and then go to
Yeah,
him
of
like,
course.
"Hey, by the way, coach, I can't play." Whereas like
Right.
if it was different, like if it was like we had no chance of making the
Mhm.
playoffs, I might not have said anything. I probably
Yeah.
would have just played. And so then they wanted to also bring in another player for like those last 10 games to
Yeah,
kind of
of
get
course.
acclimated in case they did make the playoffs. So like I felt like I said, at the time and what I knew, I was also young and what I knew about the
Mhm.
W and being pregnant. I feel like that's the best that I could do
Yeah,
to like
of
let
course.
them know, but also kind of protect myself.
Yeah, of course.
So, but he did see, and he was really receptive. He was really supportive. Like, I mean,
Good.
even to this day, like Coach T has always reached out
Yeah.
when I've gone to different teams and whatever. And then actually, after I had my son, I was actually immediately traded,
Yeah.
which at first I kind of felt a way about just because I
Hmm.
did like it in DC.
Hmm.
There was a part of me, I think at first was like, did I get traded because I was pregnant? I just had a
Right.
baby or
Right.
whatever. But I mean, I don't think it was just that. I did express like wanting more playing time and wanting a
Hmm.
bigger role with the team. And I just think the plans that they had for the team at the time were just a little bit different.
Yeah.
And what I always respect is that he traded me to New York, which was home,
Right. Of
and
course.
very helpful after having a baby. And he traded me to New York where there was an opportunity for me to play a lot of minutes and to potentially start.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I look at it that way, I was very grateful for the opportunity, but also just sad because I had built a bond with my teammates.
Yeah, of course.
And just
Bittersweet.
different things that they had in DC versus what they had in New York, and kind of how they moved around parenting and everything was a little different too. So I
Yeah,
think I was just more scared of the unfamiliar too and how
of
that was
course.
going to go.
Of
So,
course. That makes a
but
lot of
yeah, I
sense.
think they were pretty good for the most part. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. So, kind of piggybacking off of that,
Mhm.
just now throughout your entire experience, even being
Mhm.
overseas, um, do you feel like you've come in contact with anybody that has maybe still continued to put that stigma on you? Because I do feel like it's gotten a lot better, but
Mhm.
you tell me what your opinion is. I feel like especially maybe in Europe, they're very like, yes,
Yeah.
as far as you being a mom or getting pregnant, and then still trying to play. I mean, I always sign contracts that have a stipulation not to get pregnant in it
Right.
when I
Right.
go overseas.
Right.
So,
Same.
have you felt like, other than that experience, with the Mystics, that you've run into any other coaches or agents or anybody that has maybe given you a little bit of trouble, definitely because you are a mom?
Yeah. It's always hard to say
Yeah.
because there's moments where I feel like that, but then
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they're
You
able
project it,
to
maybe.
perspectives are different,
Yeah.
so I don't like to particularly I will say it's on both sides. I feel like there's experience of where I have a little bit of a, how do I say? I don't want to say trauma, but like I feel like when I ask for stuff, people seem like I'm asking for too much or causing a problem.
Yeah.
So I do
Yeah.
have a thing of like where I don't have to ask for stuff, like to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
But then I
Yeah.
also think there's also a balance of like help isn't given. Because
Yeah.
I'll say like in New York, there was a time it was like, okay, my son can't ride the bus like to the games. He
Mm-hmm.
could ride like from the airport and everything, but not to the games. And sometimes, okay, like I started playing, my son was 4 months. So like there's
Mm-hmm.
times like he's younger, you don't want him to get to the arena 2 hours early. But there's also times like when I'm playing and my cousin was helping me. She's like 16, 17. Like, no, I'd rather them both be with me on the bus.
Yeah, of
And
course.
it's like the coach saying like, oh, they can't ride on the bus to the game. And it's just like,
Right. Yeah.
what does it matter?
Yeah.
So there's little things like that when I was in New York, that I feel like I was also younger, so I feel like I really didn't have a voice to
Yeah.
say. And even though they say like, oh, we'll help you, we'll give you what you need, it just kind of seems like you don't want to cause any problems
Of
or
course.
anything like that. So there's definitely like those experiences. I remember when I was in Turkey, because I like immediately went back playing. Like
Mm-hmm.
4 months after I had my son, I was playing in W, and then I was back to overseas W, overseas W.
Yeah.
And so I was in Turkey, and it was still early. Bryson's probably like 9 months when I go over there.
Okay.
And our president always had a rule like, oh, we can't stay in Istanbul. Like even after we had a day off, or even if we had a day off, like
Yeah.
we couldn't stay. We had to travel with the team.
Yeah.
And at this point, we went to play, I remember, maybe like Russia somewhere. And we
Mhm.
were on the road for like 2 games back to back. So we went to play maybe like Euro Cup in Russia, and then we're coming back and we're playing in Ankara.
Okay.
And so after the game in Ankara, like one, they were busing back. I was like, I'm not sitting on that bus for 5-6 hours. Like
Yeah.
the flight 30 minutes. Like,
Yeah,
what am I?
let's be smart about
Whatever.
it.
And they're like, no. And it was one of those things. Like, it was probably I got back 2 or 3 hours before the team would.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just like, no, I'm going. And, a little bit of like separation anxiety at that age. At that
Yeah.
point, I hadn't been away from my son for more than 5 days.
Right.
Even when I played in the W, my son came on every long road trip. If there was a road trip he didn't come on, it was like the day trips.
Yeah, of course.
So at that point, there was still a little bit of like, no, I'm getting back. Like,
Yeah.
if we get back later, he gonna be asleep. Like,
Yeah.
no, I want to get back earlier. So, I mean, I just stood my ground. They were just like trying to get me like, no, get out the car. Like, go to, I think we played Botosh, and like Key Stokes was playing Botosh, and she helped me like arrange a car to the airport. And
Yeah,
like,
that's
my general
nice.
manager was kind of like, Bria, get out the car. Like, come on, come with the team. I was like,
No.
Like, I just like this is when I was getting a little bit older, where I'm like,
Yeah,
no,
you're like,
I
okay,
play
I'll
nice
just
all
stick
the
up.
time, and
Yeah.
I'm very respectable of certain stuff, and I communicated this. Like, I'm sorry, like, no,
Yeah,
like, I'm
absolutely.
going back.
Absolutely.
So there was a little bit of that. Then I'll say, one, I want to say on the positive side, Sandy Brondello was one of my first coaches that I felt like really, really understood.
Okay.
And that's when I had played for New York for 3 seasons. And that was different because, my family was in New York.
Yeah.
My son's father's family was also in New Jersey. So I had a lot of help right there.
Yeah.
But then when I went to sign with Phoenix, that was like completely away from any type of family or anyone that could really help.
Right.
And Sandy already had 2 kids, so she was just like so understanding.
Yeah.
Like, even going into the bubble, I was like, I'm trying to figure it out. Like, I don't know if I have a caretaker, this and that. Like, and then with COVID and stuff, it's like, I don't know if my parents really want to be in the bubble with like health concerns and all this other stuff. So I'll say like Sandy was just like, oh, like, we'll figure it out. We want you there. Like, I can help you, this and that. Dearica Hamby's also one of my really good friends.
Yeah.
Her mom came into the bubble. Like, my son and her daughter have a really close relationship where like they got to spend time in there. So in the bubble, it was a little bit better because you had like a lot of help.
Yeah, of course.
I'd have a massage or something. Sandy's like, I'll take him. He'll come hang out with me.
Yeah.
Like, she was just amazing in that aspect. And then even like I ended up tearing my ACL. So then the next year I actually go to live in Phoenix. And it's just me and my son. Like, I don't really have any friends, like family, or anything else.
Yeah.
And every day, sometimes, like, just the mental aspect, too, of, like, going through an ACL and having my son. Although I love him, like, I was like, all I do is talk to a 4-year-old all day. Like, I'm losing my mind. And Sandy would just be like, oh, he can come to my house. This and that. Like, it'd be like pregame or whatever. He'd be at the games and he's like in the locker room with her, like drawing up the game plan.
Aww. And
she was just so understanding of that. And I will say, like, there were some other coaches who were like male coaches, which is a little different being a mom and being a dad. And just as far as like hands-on approach. So Sandy was really good at that and really helped me feel comfortable, which is also probably why it's some of the best time I was playing in my career.
Yeah.
So she was really good with that. And then also when I went to Fenner after that, and I had Victor LaPena, a Spanish coach, and he's had 3 kids, and Fenner was really good about him being out there that year. It was just me, him, which like for overseas, like that's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he went to an international school out there.
Oh, that's awesome.
He would come to practices, travel with us. So they were like amazing. Then I went to play in Indiana, and I'm not going to say I didn't try, but there was always like side comments. And that was not like the best situation in my career.
Yeah.
And I get it, but I was on contract with Phoenix, ended up getting traded. So like setting up daycare and all this other stuff is different. And they'd be like, oh, we have babysitters and this and that. But it's like, you want to meet people you can trust. Like, I just got there. I like to
with anybody.
Yeah, I like to feel things out. And then he was also getting older. So I was just like, can he just sit on the side at practice?
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever. And the GM said it was completely fine. Adobo said it was completely fine. And I just feel like there were just side comments from the coach. Like, sometimes the coaches like cuss in practice or whatever. And like, Bryson be on the side of his headphone. Mind you, Bryson has been around this. Like at this point, he's 5 years old. So this isn't like, his first rodeo being around a WNBA.
Of course.
But there was a comment like, he like cursed or whatever, and it was a comment like, oh, whoever's not supposed to be in here. And I was just like, who is he talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and I actually never said that or like never even spoke about that before, but it was just little
Right.
things. And then I remember that whole situation happened. They're just like, we did everything to support her, this, that, that. I'm
Oh,
like, did you
wow.
though?
Yeah.
Like, did
Yeah.
you? And
Mhm.
I just kind of was like, I'm gonna just stay back. I don't want any issues. Like,
Right. Right.
I'm just trying to do my job, this and that.
Exactly.
Be respectful, whatever. So like,
Yeah.
there's definitely those moments of like, I did feel disrespected in that moment. I did feel like
Yeah.
because I was a mom, like they viewed me differently or just
Absolutely.
felt like they had to do so much more for me. But what I didn't like was they're like, oh, we're doing all these things for you guys are doing bare minimum
Exactly.
for
You're
me.
you're really
You know what I mean?
yeah,
You
yeah,
weren't
yeah.
like at the top. And I mean, those conditions from what I've seen have definitely changed
Yeah.
since I've been in the league.
Yeah, it does
I
seem
think
it.
you even saw Allie Quigley
Mhm.
retired, and she made a
Mhm.
statement about like
Yeah.
things that were going on in the W were not set up for you to be successful at balancing both.
Mhm.
And I do think I've been successful at balancing both, but there was moments where it was very hard. People ask me like, "How do you do it?" I'm like, "I don't even know. I
Yeah.
just wing it. I'm just winging it. I'll figure it out as I go." Like, there's been times
Yeah.
like my son, which one thing I learned later, and maybe I should have done, was like people be like, "Oh, my son is sick, my daughter's sick," and they don't come to a practice or they go to an event for their kid and this
Mhm.
and that. I never left a practice to go to an event for my son. When my
Yeah.
son was sick, he was in the training room, like
Yeah.
sleeping, laid on the table. Like I never missed anything because my kid was sick or whatever. I
Yeah.
always made maybe somebody else can come get him. Like there was
Mhm.
always that, like I have to be perfect
Yeah,
all the time.
absolutely.
So
Yeah. No, I totally
yeah.
get that. I totally understand that, and I think that I mean, I can only imagine 'cause I feel like I would probably feel the same way of, not wanting to ruffle any feathers or not wanting to feel like you're asking for too much. But even like you said, I'm sure that you probably, of course, play better when you don't have that pressure of feeling like,
Mhm.
oh, are they mad because I asked them to, help me watch my kid or,
Mhm.
XYZ. So
And then I feel like you don't want to give people room to like say anything
exactly.
too
Give them an
negatively. So then
excuse.
you're like,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I'm just like, no, like I don't need anything. I got this, or
Yeah,
whatever. So
of course. And you know what? Not that you would change anything about
right.
about your situation. And obviously everything has worked out great and you've had great
Mhm.
experiences and your son has had great experiences. But I'm sure it's also like, dang, maybe this situation would have been better if I felt more
Right.
comfortable or if I was able
Right.
to speak up.
Right.
And so yeah, that's of course unfortunate for the bad experiences that you've had, but
Mhm.
I am glad that you've had some positive and again that it's continuing just to improve overall
True.
for everybody.
Yes.
Because yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. But okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. And I
Mhm.
want to go back to your birth experience.
Okay.
So, and I know we don't have to get into all the,
Right.
nitty-gritty because I know it's crazy. But I'm always just so interested, because obviously it's so common to have kids and to
Mhm.
give birth, and that's what women do. But a
Right.
lot of people don't realize that it's like trauma. Like it's really a traumatic thing to give birth.
Mhm.
Um, and so I just want to know, like, did you have a plan going into, like, did you want to do unmedicated natural birth? Did
Mhm.
you do epidural? Like, do you feel like you had a really long birth?
Yeah.
Were there any complications? I mean, just how was that for you? And then maybe how did that impact? I know you did get back to playing fairly quickly afterwards,
Mhm.
but was there anything about your actual birth that maybe hindered anything or
Yeah.
anything different?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to like I remember. This is always funny, and I tell the story. Dearica Hamby had texted me. I woke up. Dearica Hamby texted me. She was like, "I had a dream your water broke." I was like, I texted her back. I said, "Girl, I think my water broke." So literally, so weird. So literally, like
Mhm.
I was younger. I was at my parents. My mom was still working, so she was at work, and she
Mhm.
worked in Manhattan. I lived on Long Island, And then my dad was retired, but he went to like the gym or something. Yeah, he coached boxing, so my dad was like at the gym. And no one was home. Normally someone was always home. And literally the one time no one's home.
Of course.
So I remember I was like, what do I do? And like Tirka was like, put on the pad. So I put on the pad.
That's so funny.
And then I remember I called my mom, and I want to say maybe my mom called my dad, and my mom told me to call the hospital. So then I called the hospital or whatever. So then at that point, though, I was like kind of chilling. Like, I feel like my water broke, but it was kind of like a slow leak or whatever. So it wasn't like a big whatever. So then I remember my dad came back, and then we drove to the hospital, and I was there, and I just remember feeling like I kind of like a little bit of cramps, but nothing crazy. I remember I walked to the hospital, and I was just like, like I called, like my water broke, and they're looking at me like, this girl is chilling. You're like, are you sure you're feeling? I was like, so then like they're just kind of like, all right, let's get your insurance information, whatever. So then my water broke. It was like 9 a.m. when that happened. So then at that point we're just kind of chilling, and then Bryson's dad, he lived in New Jersey, so like we're waiting for him to come on his way, and I want to say by like 2 o'clock. So first of all, plan was no epidural. My mom was always like, I have an epidural for none of my kids, this and that. Like, and I feel like I have a higher pain tolerance than my mom. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. Like, I'll just. By 2 o'clock, I was sitting there like, I need to come in here and give me this epidural. Like, I was just so used to, if I was in pain, there was like something I could do to somewhat alleviate it. And when those contractions came, there was nothing that was alleviated. I was just like, I remember Bryce's dad would like put his arm on me. I'd be like, get off me. Like, you're not helping. Then there'd be a second like, all right, like you go hold me again, like this, that. So it was just like, it was a lot. And then I remember like waiting for the epidural. And I think because I said I didn't want to, they were like really trying to like drag their feet on it. I was like, y'all don't get this man in here. Exactly. To give me. And so I think my dad went out in the hallway. He was like, oh yeah, like the anesthesiologist was just chilling out in the hallway. I'm That's like, so funny. Chilling. Like, get this man in here. So they give you the run through an epidural. And then like I had a contraction coming, and he was like, oh, I'll wait till you're done. I was like, no, you could keep going. Exactly. You got to like sign the paper. And then they gave me I remember that there was a lady in there, like a nurse. I was like, she was like my best friend. She talked you through it. I was talking to her. I'm not even like a super affectionate person with strangers, especially with strangers. But like this lady, like I gave her all types of hugs. I was like, thank you so much. Or whatever. So then after that though, I always remember UConn was playing a game. And it was January 14th. I think it was like for some sort of record. It might have been like a bunch of like home wins in a row or something like that. I remember Katie Lou was on the team because I just specifically remember. And after that, I was chilling. They gave me the epidural. I was watching basketball. I was like, I don't feel a thing. So I was good. That's so funny. I think it did slow down the labor because that was like 2 p.m., 3 p.m. And I ended up having him at like 9:30 p.m. Or something like that. Natural birth. I want to say I really didn't have any major complications. The only thing was after like they got him cleaned up, everything, they went to like move me from my room, and like I went to like stand up, and like my heart just started beating really fast. So I had like kind of high blood pressure. Which I guess they said was like a form like of preeclampsia, but it's just like after birth preeclampsia. So that was like the only thing I had. So then they sat me back down, and it like took a little bit longer for me to like move rooms, and they just monitored my blood pressure and everything like that. But that was really it. It didn't really carry on after that. So
that's good. I know. I kind of had a little similar. I feel like that's fairly normal. But yeah, you know what? I was very similar to you. Like, I really did not want to have an epidural. Like, I was like, I'm gonna thug this out. I'm gonna do it completely natural, nothing. And then
you got it.
The contractions, they kicked my butt. I was like, I wasn't even close. First of all, I think I was like 3 centimeters.
Really? I think I was like 5, but I was like, nah.
I was like, I can't. But you know what? For me, the epidural, it was such a weird feeling to like just not feel anything at all. Like it was so uncomfortable to me. just to feel so heavy in your bottom half. I was like, I feel like both of my options are horrible. So
Right. Right.
not fun at all. So after you give birth, how quickly did you actually like step back on the court or work out or what, anything, go on a run or lift or whatever? Like, when was the first time after you had your baby that you like started to get back to it, basically?
Yeah. So I always remember like initially after, with the Liberty, I was always like in contact with them. And then Rosemary Regal was the athletic trainer there. And then she was also my athletic trainer at UConn.
Oh,
So it was kind of nice to have like a familiar kind of face and someone to talk to with that. But we started like progressing. I want to say at like 2 to 3 weeks, I was doing like core stuff, like very low level.
Yeah.
But you don't realize like how hard it is. Like, like a modified plank, like on your knees for 20 seconds, you know? So I was just doing that at home or whatever. So I did like a little bit of that for like 2 to 4 weeks and built it up. So it started like 20 seconds, like, kind of working your way up to like a minute for the first like 2 to 4 weeks. Then I think one time I like kind of asked, like, can I like shoot? And I can do like some spot shooting. And this was probably at like 4 weeks or something like that.
Okay.
And my dad coaches boxing, so he had access to a gym. They have like a basketball court upstairs. And he just went with me one day, just did a little bit of shots. But then eventually after that, I want to say when I was like completely cleared to fully go back on the court, was at 6 weeks.
Okay.
And then I was on Long Island with my parents, and New York training facility was in White Plains at the time. So me and my dad, like, because my dad was retired, my mom was still working, my dad would like drive me to White Plains, like with me and Bryson. Like I'd have the breast pump, everything. We'd bring them. My dad sit on the side, like with Bryson kind of like in his car seat or whatever we would bring to sit him in. And I work out with Teaspoon. Teresa Witherspoon. So we would do that for basically all the way until the season started. And then, just building up our workouts. Then slowly, like, some other people were coming in from overseas. And more players started coming in and do, like, first it's just, like, individual workouts. They're working our way up to maybe, like, doing some 3-on-3, all the way up to 5-on-5. I remember, though, one workout, me and Spoon always laugh, like, your pelvic floor is, like, really weak. So there was one time I was like, I don't know. I just feel like everything's about to drop. She's like, what? I was like, it just felt like all this. Like, I was like, putting my stomach and, like, my lower abdomen. I was like, it just feels like it's about to drop. And she was like, well, let's go sit down. So, I was back fairly quick. And like I said, I had him January 14th, and the first game of the season was May 14th. I'm pretty sure that year. So I had that like 4 months to kind of get ready for camp. I think it helped being younger. Your body bounces back a little bit quicker, but
of course. That's so true. And I think just being an athlete in general, I think it's just a little bit easier to bounce back. Which is nice.
I worked out my whole pregnancy too, though. Like, maybe not like running so much. I felt uncomfortable running. As I got about 7 months. But I was still lifting 2-3 times a week with like one of my trainers, Burton Kelly. He trained me like since I was in high school. Just like strength and conditioning. And I would go with him, and not like, I wasn't picking up any weight, but like doing planks. We did like a little bit of like ladder footwork stuff, but like at pace, and like a lot of machines and stuff like that where we can control it. So I remember like we had a picture, like I was in the gym, like pregnant. I want to say 3 days before I had Bryson.
Man, that's crazy.
And so, then, like, so I think that helped at least, like, getting back in shape and everything.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I agree for sure. I think so. So do you feel like at the start of the season, well, okay, so let me say it like this. How, even though you were playing 4 months after, do you feel like at 4 months you were like back to you feeling really confident and good on the court, or how long after that do you feel like you were not feeling like everything was about to drop? Like, feeling like, okay, I'm back to me, like I'm doing what I do, you know.
Yeah. I'll say I always say around like 6 months is when 6 months post
Okay. Yep.
birth is when I started feeling like myself again. I think that's around the same time I think they ended up inserting me into like the starting lineup. But
Hmm.
just those preseason, I remember practice and everything. I felt really good. I was like
Yeah.
shooting well, whatever. But then
Yeah.
when we started preseason games, I was like, whoa. Like I felt a step slow.
Yeah.
I was like, my frame was really small. So I feel like after you have a baby, you lose a lot of muscle, especially in like your
Hmm.
lower legs and abdomen area, that strength. And
Yes.
I was getting pushed around a lot. And so trying to gain all that back um was definitely a lot harder. I mean, I was really, really fast back then, so that definitely helped. I could avoid contact and kind
Yeah.
of maneuver in that way. But I always remember it wasn't until about 6 months and then I ended up I probably averaged about 7 that year, but I think if you go from like that 6 month post birth mark to the end of
Hmm.
season, I probably averaged about double figures or something like that. And
Yeah.
that's when I really started to feel good and gain my confidence again.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about now.
Mhm.
Um, or even just I know this past season overseas you weren't playing overseas.
Mhm.
But I was playing against you the year before.
Yes.
And just talk to me about when you go overseas or even now when you're playing in the W, like what does that look like? Just your routine with your son and
Mhm.
is he with you the entire season overseas? Do you have,
Mhm.
your mom helping you, your dad? Like who
Mhm.
is helping you? What does that look like for him? You mentioned earlier, that he had went to an international school. Like, do you try
Mhm.
to always put him in school overseas? Do you keep him, in his home base? Just tell me what that looks like.
So for me, it always just I take it year by year.
Hmm.
It just depends on like what's feasible and what's the best thing to do for me that year. So my first 2 years, he was younger. Like I said, he was 9 months the first time. So like first 2 years, he was over there with me, and I brought like a friend or a nanny that could help me.
Hmm.
My third year, nannies are expensive, and I was just like. And I think my mom was supposed to retire that year in, like, January, so I was
Hmm.
like, "Okay, I'll stay with my parents, and then when my mom retires, she'll come over in January," but that's also, like, 2020
Right.
COVID year and all
Of
that stuff
course.
happened, so he ended up
Of
just
course.
staying with my parents,
Hmm.
that whole year, and then when I came back to the States, he was with me, we went to the bubble,
Hmm.
and that was just kinda like I was figuring out, is he gonna come? Is he not gonna come?
Hmm.
Um, I ended up tearing my ACL in the bubble, so then that next year I didn't go overseas, so, like, he just stayed with me.
Hmm.
Um, then I'm back I'm in Phoenix, he's with me. Um, then I go overseas, and so this is my last year overseas was, like, that 2020. I
Hmm.
missed 1 year for ACL, and then when I go back overseas, it's 2022,
Hmm.
and I was still very adamant, like, I always had the perspective, like, my parents raised their kids, so this is my responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like I said, me asking for help and stuff, I
Yeah.
don't really like to. But
Mhm.
then there's also a balance of like, I'm a single mother,
Yeah.
and it's really like me and my parents who kind of navigate this whole thing.
Mhm.
So I got better at like asking for help, like at least especially like people closer to me, like asking for help, or even like, especially when I was younger, like teammates. I was just like,
Yeah. Yep.
and I like to go out a little bit here and there, especially
Yeah.
younger. So I have some teammates that don't go out. They'll be like, "Nah, I'll watch him."
Of
He and
course.
her boyfriend used to watch him. So I'm like,
Yeah.
it takes a village.
Yeah.
I will say that. So then he went overseas with me that year, and that
Mhm.
at first, my dad came at first
Okay.
for like the first 2 weeks, and then my brother and his wife now, but fiance at the time, came over. So that first month, I was like, I wanted him to be there, but I didn't really know what school. I was like, I
Yeah.
gotta find a school, I gotta find this. So like the club tried to help me, but I don't know if they really knew any schools like that.
Right. Right.
So then I was playing for Fender, but like I asked some of the men. I always remember Nando DeColo,
Mhm. Okay.
he's a French player,
Yeah.
and his family was out there. He's like, "Oh, my kids go to this school,"
Yeah.
and he gave me the information. So I ended up putting Bryce in that school, and then, um, my dad and like whoever came to help me, they were able to leave, and I had it figured out of where like I would wake up in the morning, take him to school, and it was like 2-minute drive from the arena, so that was just clutch
that's
as well.
perfect. Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean that just happened to work out that way. You know, it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
So then I would take him, go to practice over. Like we had 11 o'clock practice, 11 to 1 or 2. I'd be chilling, pick him up at like 4 or 5 or something like that. If we had like a later practice or whatever, sometimes I think I always was able to get him by 5.
Yeah. Okay.
And then it was pre-K.
Yeah.
So then if we traveled or something like that, I would just tell them, hey, Bryce is not going to be there. We're traveling with the team. And like they were very understanding of that. So then the next year, I ended up tearing my ACL again. So then, but this was actually difficult because I had a house in Arizona. I was playing with Connecticut, and then I tore my ACL. My first surgery I had in Minnesota, and that's where I did most of my rehab before going to Phoenix. And so then I tore my ACL against Minnesota.
Okay.
And so Connecticut at the time, I've never gone to team doctors for surgery. That's just my preference.
Yeah.
And so Connecticut was like, oh, we can get your MRI like at HSS in New York. And I know they do a lot of things through New York. And I'm just like, we're already here in Minnesota. Like, I already hit my PC, I already hit my surgeon. Like, I'm going to just go back to them. Because, you know, we were like 100% positive. But my difficulty there was in Arizona, it was like July 24th. In Arizona, school started August 3rd.
Okay.
And so, like, my parents aren't about to go to Arizona to have him in school there. And then it was just like, when I'm there, I'm not with the Mercury anymore. Like, where am I going to rehab out there, whatever. So then in Minnesota, I didn't have an address. Like, and so my parents were still in New York. So that was the most like stable address at the time. And then I think it also gave me an ability to like fully focus on my recovery.
Yeah, of course.
So he started kindergarten in New York with my parents.
Okay.
And then that year I was very big on like, no, he's not. Like, this is the last time he's staying with my parents. Like, he's staying with me, this and that. And then I had the opportunity. I didn't sign with a W team that summer, although I was trying. Had the opportunity to play in Spain at Avenida. And so this is your league team after 2 ACLs. It's like, this is a good opportunity. Like, whatever. They didn't have any, like, international schools. They only had, like, bilingual schools. But it was like all the important subjects was in Spanish. And I'm just like, he don't know no Spanish. Whatever. So then I ended up signing there for half the season. So then I was like, okay, I can go there for a few months, half season, and then I'll come back home. Okay. And there was like the prioritization rules with W2. So I was like, I want to be back. So that I can go to W. Then I'm over there, and then Gallery reached out about coming over there. And I'm like, okay, they end before the W season's over. Spain was okay. I love living in Spain, but the basketball-wise just wasn't what I needed. I think coming back from that injury. So going to Turkey was like, I played in Turkey for years. Like, I know
familiar
like, the GMs, very familiar, and have good relationships out there. So I was like, all right, we'll go out there. So my son ended up staying that whole year with my parents in New York again. So then coming into this year, it was all strategic again. I was back living in Minnesota. I like my PTs and everything out there. So like when I'm home, that's who I go to work out with. But I knew I wanted my son to be with me this year, so I opted not to go overseas. Athletes Unlimited reached out. I was debating to go in January, but then Athletes Unlimited reached out, and I was like, you know what? Let me do this. It's 6 weeks. I get a lot more time with my son. And then my mentality also was like still getting back to the W. So
of course.
I was like, I can go into hopefully get into a WNBA training camp without the wear and tear from a whole year overseas. Like, I am older. I did have these injuries. Like, let me try to go in and make a team as fresh as possible.
Absolutely.
So that was this year. And then, so like every year just kind of, you know what I'm saying? I really winged it because I never knew until like stuff happened. I'm like, all right, now what? All right. Now what?
Of course.
And now I'm here in Connecticut, and it's the same thing. Now what? I don't know. He's gonna be here a little bit in the summer, but after that, I really just still figuring it out. So yeah,
absolutely. Well, you know what? I think that's like another aspect that makes, you know, what you're doing so incredible, because it is. I mean, there's just no real stability. Like, you know, even just the nature of of what we do, without having kids is like
Right.
you could go anywhere every single year. It's always different. You're home, then you go to Europe or you go wherever you go. It's always just a complete unknown. And then you add a kid into that. It's,
Right.
I mean, crazy. Like, I can only imagine. I'm
Right.
already stressed thinking about your kid, so I think that that's just another aspect that makes it so amazing is that, you're taking all of these things and just figuring it out. And even if you're winging it, like, you make it work, you make it happen. And, you're raising your kid and he's so cute. He's a
Thank you.
beautiful kid. And,
Thank you.
also, I just think it's so beautiful, like, for kids to have those experiences, to be able to go overseas and live over there and experience that culture and, to see you doing what you love and, just being an amazing athlete and being around different women and different people and seeing their experiences. I don't know. I just think that it's amazing. So as hard as I'm sure that it has been and as much as you're probably like, this is so stressful, it's, I think it's beautiful. So I think it's awesome that
Thank you.
you've been through all of that and done all of that. And you're inspiring to me because I'm, like I said, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So to finish up, tell me one piece of advice that you would give to someone like me who's about to start this journey, or even just to someone who doesn't have a kid yet, but wants to start a family, but also continue to play. Just a piece of advice to how you've made it work, or maybe even something that you wish that you would have done differently.
So I mean, my advice, I'll say, like, for you or someone who has kids, take it day by day. You don't have to have it all figured out. Especially as a professional athlete, like, our lives change like all the time. So it's really hard to even plan,
Yeah.
So like at the end of the day, being a good mom is kind of like doing the best you can,
Yeah.
and figuring out like what's best for you and best for your son. And then I'll also say, don't get me wrong, I get like making sacrifices for your kid and everything like that. But I also think you have to make sure you're okay and you're happy and fulfilled in your life to be a good mother or to be a good parent. So sometimes when you're sacrificing and not taking care of yourself, that in turn, like, it kind of does more damage.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the biggest thing now. Like, as much as my parents help, as much as there's times where like, dang, like, I wish I could be there for this or I might miss things. I think the big picture is like, I have to be like happy with what I'm doing and like pursuing my dream. And I hope I'm teaching my son that I want him to always like pursue what he wants to do in life,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
and kind of fight through adversity and figure it out and just be that example for him. But then also to anyone who wants to start a family, I always say, like, don't listen to like the negative kind of, the negative feelings that people project onto you. Because I feel like I've had experience of people being like, oh, well, you can't play basketball and have a kid. And maybe I was insane, but there was nothing in my mind that told me I couldn't do it. Like, I was just like, yes, I can. Like, what do you mean? I'm just going to figure it out. So I feel like don't let anybody discourage you from the things you want to do in life. Like, it definitely can be done. Like I said, it's not going to be easy, but in general, I don't think life is easy. So
Exactly.
don't let anyone just discourage you in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me and sharing all of these things. Again, like I said, I think you're amazing in everything that you've been through and that you're doing on and off the court. And I am really excited for people to hear all of this, hear your story, and hopefully this helps somebody. It's definitely helping me. So thank you.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and I will see you next time on Taya Talk.
Thanks, Taya.
Thanks, girly.